There's a moving first-hand account of the Triangle Fire here in this thing in section 21.2 of the OpenStax text, and I direct you to that. You highly recommend that you read that. Another perhaps surprising cause of many progressives was Prohibition, the movement to make the sale and consumption of alcohol illegal in the United States of America. Driving force behind this movement is the Women's Christian Temperance Union, and you can read all about their motivations, their methods in section 21.2. I won't spend much time in the video on prohibition, except to try to give a little perspective. So, why is limiting the free choice of American citizens? How does that become wrapped up and perceived as a progressive cause? How is making our list of freedoms a shorter list rather than a longer list? How is that in any way progressive? What's motivating the prohibitionists, who are largely female activists, what's motivating them is they see the crippling effect of alcoholism on families. Alcoholism is, and it's probably not, they don't have our contemporary understanding of alcoholism as a disease, so they're viewing it primarily as a moral issue, that it is from their ethical perspective. It's not my place to comment on whether their ethical perspective is correct or not, though I do teach college-level ethics. But even my ethics course is not about my ethical opinions. It's about the world's ideas on ethics. But they're viewing it primarily as a moral issue rather than a mental health and physical health issue, the way we tend to view it today. But they're also looking at the human suffering caused by alcoholism, the impoverishment, as an addict, any sort of addict will burn up all of his or her money in pursuit of his addiction. They're looking at the negative impact on families, as husbands and breadwinners are losing their jobs, showing up drunk to work, or they are, not everybody is a happy drunk. Often there are mean drunks, and it's leading to domestic violence, to the abuse of women and children, and all of those things are genuinely tragic. So one can, whether one agrees or disagrees, I hope one can sympathize with this movement of women and saying, look, this is a plague on our society, and perhaps the best tool to address the plague is legislation, to rather than try to convince people to give up the bottle. Let's make it illegal. Let's ban manufacture, sale, and possession of alcoholic beverages. And I tell you what, they took a go big or go home approach to this prohibition. So there was no nitpicking, this little law here, this little restriction there. They went all the way and successfully passed an amendment. The 18th Amendment to the United States Constitution banned the making, selling, or transporting of alcoholic beverages in the United States. Spoiler alert, that amendment is no longer in effect. There'll be another amendment to say, never mind, because in a later lesson we'll look at the unintended consequences of prohibition. Ever heard of Al Capone? Well, you're gonna in a later lesson, but I'll leave the rest for you to read in section 2.2. And I'll also predominantly leave you to read what that section has to say about radical progressives. Not every progressive was willing to work within the system, but you have some who think, you know what, the system needs to be overturned from the bottom up, and so you have the emergence of socialism and anarchism. This image is socialist propaganda, and when I say I love this image, all I'm saying, I'm not endorsing its perspective. So I love the vividness with which it demonstrates how socialists view the capitalist free market economic system. It's difficult to deny that capitalism as it was lived in the 19th and early 20th century ground many, many common workers under its heels while enriching the people at the top of the pyramid. So at the top of the pyramid is the what the socialists would say is the true god of capitalism, the almighty dollar. And here we have under the dollar is we rule you. It enriches the ruling class, the kings and the politicians. We fool you. Karl Marx, the dominant philosophical figure of socialism through his works, the Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital, was an outspoken critic of institutionalized religion and an outspoken atheist, referring to religion as the opium of the masses. So here are the ministers of the churches. The kings, we rule you. The priests, we fool you. The military, we shoot at you. And the fat cat wealthy business owners, we eat for you. It reminded me of Ebenezer Scrooge. If they be like to die, let them do it and decrease the surplus population. I'll leave it to you to read more about the radical progressive socialists and also the anarchists who were against government of any kind here in section 21.2 of the OpenStax textbooks. And I want to turn our attention to those progressives who sought to increase the rights and the standing of women in society. Women had already been making a huge impact on society. We've met Jane Addams, we've met Florence Kelley. Women first formulated their demand for the right to vote in the Declaration of Sentiments at a convention in Seneca Falls, New York in 1848, and saw their first opportunity of securing voting rights during Reconstruction, when lawmakers, driven by racial animosity, sought to give women the right to vote to oh man, why does every good thing have to cast a shadow? So here you have anti-Reconstructionists saying, yeah, let's let the ladies vote to cancel out the votes of black men. That's no fun. The movement moved forward with legal action and activism. So we're moving out of the shadow of anti-Reconstructionists now. Mary Ann Shadd Cary, Florence Woodhull, and others testified before the House Judiciary Committee, arguing that the 14th Amendment, which guaranteed equal protection under the law, indicated that women should have the right to vote. The response was, in short, nah. Susan B. Anthony, a veteran of the women's suffrage movement, registered and voted under the principle that the 14th Amendment gave her the right. And remember that the response was nah, so Ms. Anthony was arrested and ruled guilty without being... I don't like the way OpenStax phrased that. Yes, I'm capable of critiquing even my beloved OpenStax. She was arrested and... well, I don't like the way I said that. She was arrested and found guilty without being allowed to testify. That don't seem super-duper constitutional to me. On July 4th, 1876, during the centennial celebration in Philadelphia, women's voting rights activists delivered the Declaration of Rights of Women of the United States, written largely by Elizabeth Cady Stanton. By 1900, the western frontier states of Colorado, Idaho, Utah, and Wyoming had already responded to the women's movements with the right to vote in state and local elections, regardless of gender. They gave in to what the women's suffragists demanded, partly in order to attract more women to these male-dominated regions. I remember from our Go West lesson that some of these western towns and states were super duper duper dude heavy. There's a term for that, but I can't tell you what it is until you get a little bit older. But it involves the word fest. In 1890, the National Women's Suffrage Association organized several hundred state and local chapters to urge the passage of a federal amendment to guarantee women's right to vote. Let's look at, pardon that 2-second dead air. I had to remind myself what video would come next. So you could read more details of the women's suffrage movement in section 21.3. Our next video is going to take a look at the history of what eventually became the 19th Amendment, which finally made the Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal, represent women too. All men and women created equal and allowed to vote thanks to the 19th Amendment. This next video will tell you all about it.